I never thought I'd be sitting in my car, crying in my in-laws' driveway on a Sunday evening. But here I was, mascara running down my face, listening to my 8-year-old son Michael softly singing to himself in the backseat, his way of self-soothing after what had just happened at dinner. The sound of their laughter still rang in my ears, making my hands shake as I gripped the steering wheel. Mommy, are you okay?" Michael's gentle voice broke through my thoughts. Even now, he was more concerned about me than himself. I quickly wiped my eyes and turned to face him, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong in there. Nothing at all." But my mother-in-law Barbara's words kept echoing in my head. "At least the other grandkids are normal." The casual cruelty of it made my stomach turn. I've been dealing with her subtle jabs and helpful suggestions about Michael's stutter for 3 years, ever since my husband Tom passed away in a workplace accident. But tonight had been different. Tonight, they crossed a line. It was supposed to be a regular Sunday family dinner. Barbara had insisted on maintaining the tradition after Tom's death, though I suspected it was more about keeping tabs on us than genuine concern. Every week, we joined Tom's sister Amanda and her perfect children, enduring comparisons and barely veiled criticism. Tonight started like any other. We arrived at 6 p.m. sharp. Barbara hated tardiness. Michael was wearing his favorite blue sweater, the one that matched his eyes. He'd been excited all day because he'd finally mastered a new tongue twister in his speech therapy sessions. "Remember, sweetie," I told him as we walked up the manicured path to the front door, "you don't have to say grace if you don't want to. We can just." "I do want to, Mom," he'd insisted, his determined expression so much like his father's that it made my heart ache. I practiced. Barbara opened the door before we could ring the bell, her perfectly coiffed silver hair and pressed floral dress making me feel underdressed in my simple black pants and white blouse. "Oh, you're here," she said, as if we weren't expected. "Amanda and the children are already seated." The dining room was a shrine to Barbara's idea of perfection. Crystal glasses, bone china plates, and silverware that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Amanda's 3 kids sat like little soldiers, napkins in laps, while their mother adjusted her youngest daughter's bow with practiced precision. "Aunt Sophie," 11-year-old Emma called out, then quickly lowered her voice at her grandmother's sharp look. At least one person seemed genuinely happy to see us. We took our usual seats and Barbara cleared her throat meaningfully. "Michael, since you're the only grandson, would you like to say grace tonight?" I tensed, recognizing the trap. Barbara knew about Michael's stutter. She knew he struggled most when put on the spot. But Michael, brave soul that he was, straightened his shoulders and nodded. "Be bless us, O Lord," he began, his small fingers gripping the edge of the table. I could see him using his breathing techniques just like his speech therapist had taught him. "And these thy gifts." That's when it started. A snicker from Amanda's middle child, quickly followed by a poorly disguised laugh from Amanda herself. Barbara didn't even try to hide her impatience, sighing loudly and sharing a knowing look with her daughter. Michael's voice grew smaller, but he persisted. "Which we are about to receive." "Oh, for heaven's sake," Barbara interrupted. "Emma, you say it. We'd like to eat before midnight." The words hit like a physical blow. Michael's face crumpled, and I saw him retreat into himself, the light in his eyes dimming in a way that made my heart break. Actually, I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "We'll be leaving." "Sophie, don't be dramatic." Amanda rolled her eyes. "Mom's right. It's painful watching him struggle like that. Have you even tried getting him proper help?" "Proper help?" My voice shook. "He's been in speech therapy for 2 years. He's making amazing progress. Not that any of you would notice or care." "Well," Barbara sniffed, adjusting her pearl necklace, "at least the other grandchildren are normal. I suppose every family has its challenges." The silence that followed was deafening. Michael's small hand found mine under the table, and I felt him trembling. That's when something in me snapped. "Normal?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Is that what you call it? Emma can't read at grade level. But we don't mention that, do we? And Tyler's behavioral issues at school, those just get swept under the rug. But my son, who works harder than any child I've ever known, who never gives up despite people like you trying to tear him down. He's the one with problems." "How dare you?" Amanda stood up, her face flushed. my children heir. But whatever she was about to say was cut off by my phone ringing. I almost ignored it, but the caller ID made me pause. Boston Children's Hospital, Neurology Department. I answered, turning away from the table of shocked faces. Hello? Yes, this is Sophie Miller. Yes, I understand. Wait, could you repeat that? As the doctor spoke, I felt the world shift on its axis. Everything we'd been through, every test, every evaluation, it all suddenly made sense. I listened, asked a few questions, and thanked the doctor before hanging up. When I turned back to the table, Barbara was mid-lecture about my inappropriate behavior, but I barely heard her. I looked at my beautiful brave boy and smiled through my tears. Michael, sweetheart, let's go home. We have some exciting news to talk about. What news? Barbara demanded, her authority challenged by my sudden calm. I helped Michael out of his chair, gathering our things. At the dining room doorway, I paused and turned back to them. Those test results we've been waiting for. Turns out my son isn't just gifted. He's officially classified as profoundly gifted. His IQ is higher than 99.9% of children his age. The stutter? It's because his brain works faster than his mouth can keep up. But you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Being. What was the word? Oh yes. Normal. I walked out of that dining room with my head held high, Michael's hand firmly in mine. Behind us, I could hear Barbara calling my name, her voice lacking its usual authority. But I didn't look back, not this time. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of appointments and meetings. After that fateful Sunday dinner, Michael and I threw ourselves into exploring the opportunities that came with his diagnosis. The neurologist had connected us with a specialized program at Boston Children's Hospital, designed specifically for gifted children with speech differences. Mrs. Miller, Dr. Patterson explained during our first consultation, her eyes bright with excitement. Michael's cognitive processing speed is extraordinary. His mind works at such an advanced level that his verbal abilities simply haven't caught up yet. It's actually quite common among profoundly gifted children. Michael sat beside me, legs swinging, absorbing every word. He'd always been an attentive listener, but now I understood why he seemed to process information differently from other children his age. Will I always stutter? He asked, his blue eyes fixed intently on the doctor. Dr. Patterson smiled warmly. With the right support and techniques, many children show significant improvement. But Michael, your stutter isn't a flaw. It's just your brilliant mind working faster than your words can come out. I watched my son's face transform as this new perspective sank in. For the first time, his stutter wasn't a defect to be fixed. It was evidence of his exceptional mind. The calls from Barbara and Amanda started the very next day after we left dinner. At first, I let them go to voicemail, focusing instead on Michael's new journey. But they were persistent. Sophie, please, Barbara's message played as I prepared dinner one evening. We need to talk about this, about Michael. I've been doing research about gifted children. And, delete. Aunt Sophie, Emma's voice came through in another message. Is it true what Mom said about Michael being some kind of genius? Can I still come over to play with him? That one I kept. It was Emma who finally broke through our self-imposed isolation. She showed up at our door one Saturday morning, clutching her backpack and wearing a determined expression that reminded me of her Uncle Tom. I missed you, Emma, Michael said, his face lighting up at the sight of his cousin. I missed you too, she replied, then turned to me. Aunt Sophie, can I please stay? Mom doesn't know I'm here. I took the bus. I should have sent her home immediately, but something in her eyes, a mixture of defiance and hope, made me pause. I called Amanda to let her know where Emma was, enduring a brief tirade before she reluctantly agreed to let her daughter stay for a few hours. Watching Michael and Emma together that afternoon was eye-opening. They fell into their old rhythm instantly, with Emma patiently listening as Michael explained his latest science project about solar systems. She never rushed him, never finished his sentences. When he stuttered, she simply waited, genuinely interested in what he had to say. You know, Emma confided in me while Michael was getting them snacks. I always knew Michael was special. He helps me with my reading sometimes. He never makes fun of me like Tyler does. The doorbell rang again around 4 p.m. This time it was Barbara, come to collect Emma. She stood on my porch, looking somehow smaller without her usual air of superiority. Sophie, she began, then stopped, seemingly at a loss for words. I waited, one hand on the door, ready to close it if necessary. I've been doing a lot of thinking. About Michael. About how we've treated both of you. Now isn't the time, Barbara, I said firmly. Please, she persisted. I found some old videos last week, of Tom at Michael's age. Did you know he had a stutter too? I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? He worked with a speech therapist all through elementary school. I was so focused on fixing him that I never considered. She pulled out her phone, hands shaking slightly as she opened a video. There on the screen was my late husband as a child, standing at what looked like a science fair. He was trying to explain his project, stuttering over certain words, but his eyes shone with the same intelligence and determination I saw in Michael every day. Tom outgrew his stutter eventually. Barbara continued, her voice thick with emotion. But I never stopped pushing him to be normal. Even after he became successful, I kept pushing. Maybe that's why he was working such long hours at the construction site that day. She broke off, tears falling freely now. Inside, I could hear Michael and Emma laughing over something, the sound of innocent joy floating through the house. I can't change the past, Barbara said finally. I couldn't protect my son, but I'd like a chance to do better by my grandson. If you'll let me. I looked at her standing there, this proud woman humbled by regret and revelation. Part of me wanted to shut the door, to protect Michael from any more potential hurt. But another part, the part that remembered how much Tom had wanted his mother's approval, made me hesitate. Michael has a presentation at the Gifted Program's Science Symposium next week, I said carefully. If you'd like to come, you can see for yourself what he's capable of. But I held up a hand as hope bloomed on her face. There are conditions, no criticisms, no comparisons, and absolutely no talk about being normal. Barbara nodded eagerly, looking more like an uncertain grandmother than the imperious matriarch I'd known for years. Can Mom come too? Emma piped up from behind me, making us both jump. She and Michael stood in the hallway, their faces hopeful. I looked at my son, silently asking if this was what he wanted. He gave me a small nod. Yes, he said clearly. I do want to show everyone my project about quantum physics. Barbara's eyes widened at the word quantum, and I saw the moment she truly began to understand just how special her grandson was, not despite his differences, but because of them. The day of the science symposium arrived bright and clear. Michael stood before his presentation board in the Boston Children's Hospital auditorium, wearing a crisp blue button-down shirt and his father's old lucky tie, which I carefully shortened for him. His project, Understanding Quantum Entanglement for Kids, had already drawn attention from several of the program directors. Are you sure they're coming? Michael asked for the third time, adjusting his note cards. They promised, I'd assured him, though I was also anxiously watching the entrance. Just then, I spotted them, Barbara, Amanda, and Emma, making their way through the crowd. But they weren't alone. Behind them trailed Amanda's other children, Tyler and Lily, and even a few extended family members I hadn't seen since Tom's funeral. We wouldn't miss this for the world, Barbara said as they approached, her voice lacking its usual sharp edge. She traded her formal attire for a sweater with planets and stars on it, an obvious attempt to connect with Michael's interests that brought an unexpected lump to my throat. Emma immediately rushed to Michael's side. Can you show me your project before it starts? As Michael began explaining his work to his cousin, using his breathing techniques when needed, I noticed something remarkable. He was stuttering less than usual, his excitement about the subject matter helping the words flow more smoothly. The rest of the family gathered around, and to their credit, they listened without interruption. Ladies and gentlemen, the program director's voice came over the speaker system. We're ready to begin our young scientists' presentations. Michael was scheduled to go third. As we took our seats, Barbara squeezed my hand briefly, a gesture so unexpected I almost pulled away. But the worry in her eyes was genuine. The first two presentations were impressive, one about marine biology, another about renewable energy. Then it was Michael's turn. He walked to the podium, took a deep breath, and began. Key quantum entanglement sounds complicated, he started, his stutter present but not stopping him. But imagine you have two best friends who always know what the other is thinking, no matter how far apart they are. What followed was 12 minutes of the most engaging explanation of quantum physics I'd ever heard, delivered at a level children could understand while still maintaining scientific accuracy. Yes, he stuttered. Yes, some words took longer than others. But his passion and intelligence shone through so brightly that nobody seemed to notice. I glanced at Barbara during the presentation. She sat with her hand pressed to her mouth, tears sliding down her cheeks. Amanda looked stunned, while Emma was beaming with pride. Even Tyler and Lily were leaning forward in their seats, genuinely engaged. When Michael finished, the applause was thunderous. The program director approached the podium, smiling broadly. I'm pleased to announce that Michael Miller's project has been selected for presentation at the National Youth Science Congress in Washington, D.C. next month. The family erupted in cheers. Barbara was the first one out of her seat, pulling Michael into a tight hug. You remind me so much of your father, she whispered, loud enough for me to hear. He would be so proud of you, and I'm sorry, so sorry, that I couldn't see it sooner. Later, as we gathered in the reception area, Michael was surrounded by his cousins, all eagerly asking questions about his project. I stood back, watching the scene unfold, when Barbara approached me again. Sophie, she said quietly, I have something for Michael. And for you. She pulled an envelope from her purse. Inside was a photograph I'd never seen before. Tom, at about Michael's age, standing proudly next to his own science project. Tom won first place that year, Barbara explained, her voice thick with emotion. He studied so hard, practiced his presentation for weeks. Just like Michael, I pushed him to overcome his stutter, but I never really celebrated his brilliance. I won't make the same mistake with my grandson. She paused, then added, I've set up a college fund for Michael. It's the least I can do. Barbara, we don't need. Please, she interrupted. Let me do this. Not because I feel guilty, though I do, but because Michael deserves every opportunity to develop his gifts. And because, she took a shaky breath, because that's what Tom would have wanted. Watching Michael with his family now, seeing him accepted and celebrated for exactly who he was, I felt the last pieces of hurt begin to heal. He caught my eye across the room and gave me a bright smile, his father's smile, before turning back to explain something to Tyler about parallel universes. He's going to change the world someday, Barbara said softly. I nodded, thinking of how he'd already changed ours. He already has. That evening, as I tucked Michael into bed, he asked, Mom, do you think Dad would have understood my project? Oh, sweetheart, I smiled, showing him the photograph Barbara had given us. I think he would have loved every word. Michael traced his father's face in the photograph, then looked up at me with those wise eyes that held so much understanding. I'm glad they came today. All of them. Me too, baby, I said, kissing his forehead. Me too. As I turned out his light, I realized that sometimes the biggest achievements aren't measured in awards or recognition, but in the moments when people open their hearts to understanding. My brilliant boy with his beautiful mind had taught us all that lesson, one stuttered word at a time.